Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Get Ready for the Answer. And I'm going to be answering all of your questions about recording, mixing, and the music business. Maybe we're going to emphasize the music business a little bit more today than what we usually do, but nonetheless, it's time for Get Ready for the Answer. So, let's get down to it right now. Don't forget, you can ask. Here we go. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and you may know me from my books. Here's some that are available. You might like those on Amazon. Recently, this is my latest one, Music Mixing Workbook, and it was number one for quite a while on Amazon. You might know me from my blogs and podcasts. Maybe my courses. I see Steven's here. Hello, Steven. Good to have you here. I'm going to get to all your questions. Ask them in the comments. I will see them, and I'll be sure to answer them. But first, let's get to some that were sent in beforehand. Here's one from Graham Peterson. Should you have to pay to submit songs? Well, submit songs where? If you mean submit songs to publishers, if you mean submit songs to music supervisors, things like that, well, then no, you shouldn't. But on the other hand, there are services that will do that for you, and that's part of their service. So, yeah, if that's the case, if you're going to use a service, then they're going to charge you, so you should expect it. But if you can reach out directly, then no. And let's face it, once you get to a certain level of success, you're going to be reaching out directly to most of your contacts. But again, if you're just starting, you don't have those contacts, and you have to use a service, and they're going to charge you for it. So, yeah, I would say that's going to happen. All right, from Matt Howe. In my area, I'd say there was 10 project studios all turning out the same quality of work. I put myself in this bracket. The question is, how do I differentiate myself from the other studios? Well, the whole deal here, Matt, is what do you do differently from everybody else? I mean, that's the very first thing to check out. What is it that makes you different? Do you do something better than anybody else? Do you do something... do you have different gear than everybody else? Do you have... do you work on different music than everybody else? All of those things will help differentiate you. Is it your expertise that's different? You can sell your studio, you can sell your expertise, you can sell yourself, and the studio comes along with it. There's one really good... I'm a big one for defining what you do and your branding. And one of the ways you do that is with a sub comment, basically, a subtitle. And one of the subtitles from a studio that I saw that I thought was great was My Studio, Your Sound. I thought that was perfect, because what that meant was I'm not going to impose what I do upon your sound, where, many engineers do that and producers do that. That may actually be something, if you do that, that's not a bad thing either. That differentiates you from everybody else. So do a deep dive. Find out, first of all, what each one of your competitors are doing. Find out about their gear. Find out about their clientele, and then just look at yours and see, well, what is it that I do that's different from those? Do I have different gear? Do I have different clients? Do I work in a different type of music? Do I have different skills? Can I offer different things that the other ones don't? That's a really good place to start. Okay, from Marcos. How would you define the concept of depth in the mix? Can you think of a simple way to describe it? Yeah, sure. It's ambience. There are certain instruments that get pushed back further than others. So think about if you go see a band on stage. There's a front man at the front of the stage, and then there are people behind that, and then there may be a drummer in the back. So it's all kind of layered. So as a result, whoever's in the back is a little farther away, and the ambience is going to be a little different as a result. So you can think of it like that, where you're layering ambiences. It's that kind of started in the UK. They were a lot better at doing that than Americans were, and I'm talking more about the '80s when that started to happen. So what would happen is in the United States, we would have, a reverb and a couple of delays, and that's what we'd use for the most part, and we'd make everything glue together. It would sound good and sound polished. But there, they began to experiment more with depth, so they'd have more reverbs, more spaces that they use, more delays. So every instrument had its own ambience, and as a result, it felt more layered. And now it's not so much an English thing anymore. Everybody sort of does that to some degree, but that's what it is. Depth in the mix is, there's some instruments, there's some mix elements that are pushed back in the mix. I'll give you another example. For instance, it would be things like pads. A pad is a mix element with really long notes, strings, um, an organ, synthesizers. It could be a big power guitar just playing a chord. And they tend to sound better when they're pushed back in the mix with lots of reverb. So they get pushed way back, but it doesn't matter because those long chords, the way they are, it just, fills things out. So that's that's the best way I can describe it for you, Marcos. I hope that works for you. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm going to get to them pretty soon. I see we got a few already. Oh, here's one from Eddie. I got to put this up. There we go. Hi, Eddie. Says, I'm glad you got your hacking situation controlled now. Yeah, that took a long time. I mean, it first started 6 months ago, and I tried all sorts of different things, and it cost me a lot of money. And finally, what I had to do is call some experts in, and we moved our servers completely. I moved from one service to another, and everything got better. But now, we're pretty much past that. But it took a lot of money to get there. I have to say, it was not healthy. It was not pretty, and my sites were down quite a lot. I mean, there was one period it was down for 10 days. So, yeah, we're now back online. So thanks for asking. Okay, let's see. Here's another one that was sent in from Jamie. I have in the last 5 years, produced 700 tunes or so privately, mostly instrumental across jazz, blues, funk, fusion, Latin, R&B, trying to figure out best roadmap to possibly making a late career change. Well, okay, that's easy. You're making library music. You're you're the perfect person to do sync licensing and to build your own library. Or if you don't want to do that, to contribute to other libraries. And there's lots of them out there that you can be contributor to. All these songs, especially instrumentals, are fine because we're just talking. It doesn't. You don't have to have lyrics, or you don't have to have vocals on something to work in television or commercials or whatever. So, matter of fact, sometimes it's a lot better, and sometimes they ask you to take them off. So you should there's lots of places you can look. Look at Chris SD's course, Michael Elsner's course. Both of those are good places to start. Just do Chris SD is. I should know this, and I don't. Anyway, just search for Chris SD or Michael Elsner, and I think you'll find what you need. They're a good place to start. Best way to market my mixing service in today's economy. What do people charge? Well, this is a good question. Actually, right now we're going over this. I want to tell you about this. Right now, this is running my Fill Your Calendar workshop. It's a free workshop, 3-part workshop. We're in number 2, but you can go watch number 1 as well. So go here, BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com/calendar. And here's what we've covered so far. We've covered how to get more paying work, which is critical. Everybody wants that. And we've looked at the secret to promoting yourself. That just posted today. And then coming up on Thursday is how to meet the right people in the business. So this is free. Just go to BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com/calendar and register. And I think you'll like it. It's pretty cool. So anyway, coming back to the question, and the question kind of brought this on, the best way to market my mixing service, and this is what that particular workshop is all about. Well, in this case, David has lots of experience, so you go back to all of your contacts and you reconnect with them all. Simplest thing. Just make connections with all the people that you used to work with, all the people that you know. One of the things that happens in the music business is people change jobs a lot, and they move to new positions a lot. And sometimes, like a runner who may seem insignificant in the studio could be the president of a record label. It's happened before. I mean, Jimmy Iovine. Jimmy Iovine was a runner at record plant, and look what happened to him. So it can happen to you too. These things happen real fast, but in terms of marketing, don't forget people like that. Just reach out, because you never know what kind of jobs they might have that might be helpful. And all you do is you reach out and you say, hey, just catching up. And at the end, you say, if you're looking for anybody, remember me. Just keep my name at the top of the list, and you make it nice and cordial. And you'll find that you get a lot of work just reconnecting. So that's the one thing I would do. As far as what people charge, what I described to Matt before was you have to find out what your competitors are charging, first of all. So what is the going rate for what you do? Whatever the going rate is, then it doesn't mean that that's what you have to charge. It just means you have a reference point, because you're going to charge for your experience. You cannot compete with somebody that's just starting, that's doing a mix for $10. I'll do your mix, just give me $20. Or $10 an hour or anything like that. You can't compete if you have any experience. And if you try, it actually looks bad. You bring yourself down to their level. So you can't do that. You have to charge for your 10,000 hours. And when you do that, it's easier to say, it's $1,000 a mix. You know what? How much you got? All right, this one time I'll do it for that. I mean, there's lots. You can negotiate when you're high. You can't negotiate when you're low. So those are just a couple of things. But you have to find out what the going rate is at your level. All right. By the way, you want to register for the Fill Your Calendar workshop. That's how to do it. All right, let's get to some questions from Wes. I have all your books, and they're a great resource. Very cool. Thanks, man. My question is, do you have any tips for using the Roland Dimension D on vocals? You know, it's funny because this was so subtle. This isn't a dramatic effect. There's 4 presets on it, and that's the whole thing. There's presets, so you can't really dial much in. And the 4th one was the one that was the most dramatic, and the other 3 are kind of like there. But there were 2 ways where they're used, 3 ways that I can remember, and I would use it like that today. One was you had something like a piano that you just wanted to make different. You wanted to make it cooler sounding, or maybe a guitar, especially if it was clean, and you'd put it on. Or if you wanted to put it in stereo, it's mono, you wanted to make it stereo. That would do it really nicely. It was, and even on the subtle settings, it would sound good. Another thing is on background vocals, it would sound really good. It would make them sound bigger than what they are. And then sometimes you'd use it on the most extreme setting on lead vocal if it was a little pitchy, and that would help it. It wouldn't feel as pitchy. Even though, again, it's not totally dramatic, terribly dramatic, but that's where you'd work. Now today we won't really have anything pitchy because you're going to use probably auto tune of some type to tune it up. I don't personally, but many people do. But that works, and sometimes it makes it sound better than auto tune because it just sounds more natural. But those are the things that typically used on. Alejandro, yes, good to see you again. Andreas, okay, what's the matter when the mix is tight and nice but a little too loud? And finally, just the noise, it's like quiet. Bass gets soft and the snare claps don't hit. I'm not quite sure I'm following you. I'm not sure I'm following you, but it could be that if it's what I think you're talking about, it could be you've overcompressed everything. It's compressed too much. And then you tend to, it sounds tight in certain places and then in other places. I think you're saying there's noise when it's quiet. Well, yeah, the noise is going to come up if it's too compressed. And then there are parts where sometimes the balance is going to flip because it's too compressed or limited. So that would be my guess without knowing more. You got to be subtle with that stuff. You can't hit it too hard. I mean, if you were to sit in with one of the A-list or legendary mastering engineers and watch what they do, and I always am, you're shocked at how little they do and how much better it sounds. You look over the shoulder and you go, well, you're only adding a quarter dB here, and yet it sounds brighter. And well, there's only a dB and a half of compression, and yet it sounds so much better. They just, they know how to do it. But everything is subtle, and it's a lot of very little subtle things that make a big difference. Okay, Eddie, do you ever have any grief on guitars like desired pickups for tones? I'm not sure what you mean here, but I can remember where with some guitarists that they only want to use the back pickup all the time, and you'd go, you know what? It would sound better if you tried a different pickup combination just for this second overdub, you know, and get a lot of pushback. No, this is my sound. So yeah, I mean, it comes up a lot, and not a lot. It comes up with less experienced players where they're going to say, "Oh no, this is my sound." But you know, it's pretty common when you're doing overdubs and you're doing layers that you want different sounds because you put them together and they sound better. If it's the same sound over and over and over that you're layering, it just, you know, they don't work as well. So yeah, then you use different pickup combinations. Alejandro, which situation would you use a Haas delay and why? Okay, Haas delay, that's anything below 40 milliseconds. We don't hear it as a repeat at all. When we get above 40, then you hear a distinct repeat. But below 40, we don't hear it. It sounds like one. But what it does do, it gives us some really nice stereo if we want. So there's a where we're going to use a Haas delay is we got something in mono, we're going to put it in stereo, and we spread it out. And you know, again, you put something on one side and 30 milliseconds on the other side, 30 millisecond delay on the other side, and it just sounds bigger and wider, fatter. So there you go. That's one thing. Another thing is sometimes you want ambience on like a vocal, but you don't want reverb, and a delay just doesn't sound right. So a Haas delay makes it sound, gives it some ambience and polish without it sounding like there's ambience on it. So those are two reasons right off that I can think of. It's really useful. It's not, again, it's not. Sometimes what you'll do is you'll have a vocal, lead vocal, and you'll just go 10 milliseconds on one side, 15 on the other, and you'd be shocked how much better it sounds. So this is used all the time. Oh yeah, never tried it in piano. I think you're talking about the Dimension D. Yeah, yeah, try it there. It's great. Alejandro, how do I know if I need a mic booster? Well, if you have to turn the mic up loud enough that it's getting noisy, then you need one. So there are some microphone preamps, for instance, that as you turn them all the way up, then they start to get noisier and noisier. This usually happens like with the ribbon mic, for instance, because it's a low output, or a mic like this, an SM7, because it's a low output, or like an RE20 sometimes, an EV RE20. Those are the common ones. They have a low output. So they work no problem with something that's loud, but as soon as you get something that's quiet and you have to crank the level, then it might get noisy. So what you do is you use a cloud lifter or a Royer debooster or one of those, and it'll give you an extra 10 or 20 dB of gain that's really clean. So then it's louder without any extra noise, and that's why I'd use it. I used to use one on this one. I started with a cloud lifter, and then I moved to a debooster. The debooster works. I just like the sound of it better. And honestly, I can't even tell you why. It just sounded better to me. But I changed to a different preamp. I changed to a R&D Rupert Neve Shelford channel, and there's plenty of clean gain. So I no longer use it because it's not noisy and and I A beat it, and this just sounds good without it. So I don't use it. Um, David, what do you think of the sound of the Jamaican studios in the 70s and 80s and the techniques used in dub reggae? Okay, now I wasn't there, so I've never been to those studios during those times. But I know lots of people that were. One of my best friends, as a matter of fact, used to work there a lot. So I've heard all the stories about, and again, firsthand from people that were there. So I again understand it wasn't me. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but some of my really good friends were there. Um, and what I understand is that the speakers were tuned in such a way that a lot of engineers, outside engineers, couldn't get used to it. They'd come in and they just couldn't hear it. There'd be no low end. So that's why there's so much low end on those early 70s and 80s reggae songs, because they cranked everything up in order to get enough bass, to hear enough bass in the room, and it wound up being way too much, but it became their signature sound. But I know Ken Scott told me that he went to they went with Elton down to whatever was the hot studio at the time, and I can't think of the name of it. And they decided after a week they couldn't work there. And I think this was on the beginning of Yellow Brick Road, and they canned the whole thing. And no one's ever heard those tracks because they just didn't like them, and they eventually went back to France and did everything there. Ken didn't go on that part, but he started it. Um, and then Richard Feldman, my other friend, who knew everyone well down there and worked a lot down there. He told me all the stories. So apparently, it was that their what worked for the Jamaican engineers didn't work for anybody else. Okay, from Jean Francois. At what level do you usually mix, and how often do you go loud? Are you using Scrapbox more than a? Okay, so your question is what playback level? I believe in the three level technique. And here's how it works. In order to hear what's going on with the low end, the bass and drums, you have to move some air. You need it to be loud. Now, it only has to be loud for a few minutes, but it has to be loud enough that you can hear what's going on up there. So you're going to crank it and hear what you have to hear, then bring the level down to a comfortable level that's not going to burn you out. And then you do the vast majority of your mix there. And then at the very end, you turn the level down as low as you can to a whisper level, and then you balance things up again, because at that low level you're going to find certain elements are going to jump out. You're going to be too loud or not loud enough. So that final balance is what is going to make you compatible, make that mix compatible with the outside world. So that's the technique. But being loud, you don't have to be loud for very long. Now, I work with a very famous rock band, very famous, who I think they were all deaf. And I can remember the bass player coming in for a playback and going to the monitor control and cranking it all the way up. And I thought my ears would explode. And this would happen every single time. That's not good for you. You know, I don't suggest you do that. All you need, it just has to be loud enough that you can hear what's going on in the low end. And it only has to be, once you hear that, then you don't have to play it that loud. But now, in terms of Scrapbox or small monitors, different monitors, no, I don't use them often, but I do. My monitors are Amphion 118s, which are passive with an Amphion 500 amplifier. And I just know what everything sounds like. But if I do want to check, I have a pair of no-name. I think I might have them here. Some little crappy monitors here that are, I think they're $10 that I paid for them. And if they sound, it's probably going to sound pretty good on them. If I use a 3-level method, it's probably going to work on them, and if it works on them, it'll probably sound good on everything. But do I spend a lot of time on them? No, just a quick check. Eddie, do you own a cloud lifter? I do own one. I don't use it, but I own one, yes. I did use it when I had to before. I don't have to now. Let's put it like that. So before, I was using a Neve 1073 clone, and it had lots of gain, but it wasn't noise-free gain. So when I turned up loud enough, I got noise. So I used the cloud lifter, and I get rid of the noise. I got the level without the noise. Now that I've changed to the Shelfer channel, I get plenty of clean gain, so I don't need it. Oh, here's a good one from Felipe. What are your thoughts about distortion plugins? You use them when you need them, but I'm not one for using them all the time. That and saturation. I was taught to make things as distortion free as possible. So I'll tell you, this is where I see saturation plugins being useful. It's like with the bass, especially, you find that EQ the bass, it kind of sits in the mix, but it doesn't speak. It doesn't do what it needs. And you put that on, add some harmonics, and all of a sudden it's there. You can hear it better. And that's like the perfect use for those type of things. So again, it's usually like, it's one of the last things I'll do if I can't make it work any other way. It's not one of the first things. See, again, I grew up in the days of analog tape. I know what analog tape sounds like. It wasn't that great. This whole thing about lifting this up to this level of, of excellence, I don't get. Here's the way it used to work. You'd record something. Before you recorded it, you would hear it coming in through the console. You go, boy, that sounds good. You record it, it would go through the tape machine. You hit playback and you go, why doesn't it sound the same? Why did the sound change? It's like, why would I want that? I want it to sound exactly the same as I just heard it. So, Andreas, what do you think about minus 14 LUFS, minus 16 on streaming platforms? They grab too much power out of the sound. No, it doesn't change anything. It's just a level. What do you think about, minus 23 and minus 24 LUFS on television? Minus 23 in Europe, minus 24 in the U.S. Does it change anything? No, it's all it is just it's level. It looks at level over time. That's all. If there's too much power coming out of the sound, it's because of the way you mixed it. Simple as that. Has nothing to do with the LUFS level. Oh, let's see. What do you think about mastering in the box? Possible to make a pro sounding result? Yes, if you know what you're doing. I mean, that's what a lot of mastering engineers do. They master in the box. There's lots of them. Don't forget, a mastering engineer it's not the gear, it's the ears. It's not the gear, it's the ear. For a mastering engineer, that's all they do all day long, and they've done it for years and years and years. Most of them will tell you they don't get good until they've done it for 5 years or more. And I ask them all in my podcast when I get them all. I say, "How long do you think it took you before you had a handle on it?" And almost all of them will say, "Well, 5 years." So they have 5 years of everyday experience listening to really good tracks and really bad tracks, all different genres. And they know what really good tracks should sound like. Now, chances are you don't. So it's not the gear. It's not that the gear can't do it. It's just you don't know where to go with it. So that's the big problem. But can you make a pro sounding result? Yeah. I mean, pros do it all the time with the same gear. So it's not. Once upon a time, you went to a mastering studio because the gear was stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else. It was really purposely made for the mastering studio. Still is, but more so then. Some of it was custom made. So, you go to a place because it's the only place you can get that sound. But that's not the case anymore. What do you think about clone brands? Could you recommend any? Well, most of them are pretty good. You can't expect it to be just like the real thing for less money. It doesn't work that way. It gets you the kind of in the ballpark, but that's it. Warm audio tends to work really well. Their stuff sounds pretty good. Does it sound like the real thing? No. Does it sound good? Yeah. Advanced audio. Here's a KM84 from Advanced Audio. They call it the CM1084, but it's a KM84 clone. That sounds pretty good. Does it sound like a KM84? And not exactly, but it's in the ballpark. So you can't expect it to be. You can only expect it to be 90% of the way there. It gives you the flavor, but not the real thing. So that's the best thing I can say. But most clone brands they're run by people that really care and are really trying to get as close as they can and doing whatever they can to do that. So uh, um, I don't think you can go wrong. Just don't expect it to be exactly like the real thing because it's not. Eddie, are 5-inch speakers the best to mix on? There's no best. I would, I think you're better off to mix on bigger ones. To be honest with you, because you can hear the low end better. I mean that's important. If we don't get the low end right, the mix doesn't sound good. So I'd always say bigger speakers are better, at least 8-inch. But can you do it on fives? Yeah. Yeah, Wes, second question. It's struggling to push the vocal through the mix. I sometimes do a subtractive bell on the mix bus between 800 and 3K. No, that'll work. That'll work, but, it's not the best way. See, I think that probably what's going on is that if you're having problems, you're putting the vocal in the mix too late. The easiest way to do this is you do your bass and drums, you put the vocal in right away, and you build everything around it. And then you never have that problem. You just don't because you're building around the vocal already. If you wait until the end, like a lot of people do, they'll mix everything, they'll wait until the end, then they'll put it on. Well, if you do that, then you're always going to have a problem because it's not going to fit. It's either going to be too loud or too soft. So, and then you have that problem. So I would suggest just get the vocal in as soon as you can. Do the bass and drums, put the vocal in, build around it. No problem. Cool, Eddie. Glad you do. Excellent. Very cool. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I want to tell you one more time about the workshop. Fill your calendar workshop. Go to BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com/calendar to register. It's free. There are 3 lessons about keeping your calendar full. So just go there, and it says starting May 16th. Yeah, it started, but you can watch back what we did, so it's not a problem at all. And it will be going the rest of the week. So give it a shot and see what you think. I think you'll like it. All right, everybody. I don't see any more questions, so if there isn't any, I think we'll probably sign off here, unless I see something come up in a second. This was fun, though. I hope I answered all your questions. Andreas, greets from Switzerland. Yeah, man, I haven't been to Switzerland in a long time. I'd like to get back. One last question. Yes. Go for it. Jean-Francois, tell me. Ask me. Phone speaker platforms. Yes, they work. I have a couple right now that I'm not using, but they work. The whole idea is if you put your speakers on your desk, then the low end radiates, and what happens is you hear the sound coming from your speaker, and then you're actually hearing it from the desk afterwards. So it smears, then the low end smears. So if you decouple that speaker somehow, I mean, you can use mouse pads, that'll work too, but just decouple it somehow and use the foam, that'll work, and that will stop, and your low end will sound a little bit smoother. So yeah, it works. Don't spend too much money on it. You don't have to. Hey, from Wes, love to know the ADT trick. Yeah, you know what? That's a little too abstract for me to just describe. You almost have to see that one in action. Yes, Caesar, no problem. Oh, okay, wait. Okay, I missed this one. How to approach a library music agency. Is there such a thing? You can send your music for placement. Yeah, sure. There's plenty of them. They're all over. Um, they all want to hear your music. That's what they do. So just do a search for library music and send them some samples. You'll see they'll tell you how they'd like it submitted and go from there. Um, Libraries can be helpful for some people. For some people, they're not. Uh, Another way to go is a service like taxi.com, and you have to pay for that. It's a monthly fee, but they send out alerts when people are looking for music, certain types of music. Now, understand there are probably thousands of other people that are probably submitting at the same time, but at least you'll know about it and you'll get a feel for how that works. So that's another way to do it. But just go to do a search for library music. You'll find hundreds of them, and just look and see how they want the submissions. But believe me, they want to hear from you. So it's not like a record label. They work a little bit differently. Talking about TV series placement or commercial. Yeah. Well, the real people that make decision are music supervisors. They're much more difficult to find. There are publications. Go to the music registry, musicregistry.com, and I think they actually have a listing of all the music supervisors. But again, there are ways to approach them. You can't just send stuff out to them. You have to, because it has to fit what they do. So you're better off to actually join something like Taxi first to see how it's done. I mean, if you don't know how to do this, you need some schooling first to know how it's done. New York City compression on 808. Yeah, it works. So basically what it is you have an 808, you want it to sometimes an 808 can get lost in the track. It can be one of these things where it's not loud enough or it's too loud. You can't get quite the right level. That tends to be the way that works with that. So what you'll do is you'll put some New York City compression, some parallel compression on it, and on the parallel track, you'll really compress it hard, and when you bring it up, you'll find that it will fit better in the track. As you bring it up, you'll hit the right level. So, yeah, that works. Oh, boy, this is good. Had a chance to chat with Terry Manning a few weeks ago. We were discussing EQ sandwich at Compass. Yeah. Um, compression, EQ, compression. Yeah. Terry's a great guy. The second episode with Terry of my interview with Terry is just posted today in the podcast. So go to my podcast, and you can hear both episode 1 and episode 2 with him. It's a two-parter, but he was great. Do you have bass traps in a wall at your back? No, those are called tube traps. Well, sort of. They're made by a company called Acoustic Sciences, ACS, ASC, Acoustic Sciences Corporation. They're a combination trap, bass trap, diffuser, and absorber. It's a combination of all three. And you just see the tip of the iceberg. I have them in every corner. I have them all across the front of my room and even on some of the sides. I also have acoustic panels too, so you're just seeing a little piece of them, of what you see in the back. And then in the middle, you'll see that there's 4 of them near the door. Those are actually hats. They're supposed to go on top of speakers. And I just had extra ones, so I piled them up there. But they sound really good. How many milliseconds is true tape delay? No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter the milliseconds. It's the sound. That's what tape delay is. Tape delay doesn't have any high end. That's what's, and it's distorted. That's what makes the sound of tape delay. It's not the delay. It's not the number of milliseconds. Because see, what would happen is with the tape is on repeat, and it's a big loop, and it goes round, round, and round. And the more it goes around, the more the oxide gets worn down. The more it gets worn down, the less high end you have, and the more distorted it gets. And the electronics are distorted. So that's the sound of tape delay. Oh, great episode. Yeah, okay, so you listen to Terry. Yeah, Terry's awesome. Looking forward to doing more with him. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot. Again, remind you the workshop. It's free. 3 parts. BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com/workshop. And also, There's free PDFs and ebooks. You can go to bobbyowsinski.com/free resources, and lots of stuff there. So thank you, everybody, and we'll do it again soon. I want to thank everybody for all their questions. They're really a lot of fun, and I hope I helped you. Take care.